So welcome all. Today we will talk about Hardy-Weinberg's equilibrium. Hardy-Weinberg were scientists, and they were talking about equilibrium of alleles and genes in population. So equilibrium, we know that the rate when the rate constant of when forward reaction, backward reaction, when the rates are same for both forward and backward reaction, then something is called an equilibrium. So to start with Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium, first we have to understand the principles of population genetics. So to proceed with it, it is very important to know what is population. So there are few objectives that we are going to cover in this presentation. So what is population? It is very important to understand what is population if you want to understand Hardy-Weinberg. And moreover, population is the basic unit of evolution. So that's why it's very important to understand what is population and what is the role of population in evolution. That exactly I was just talking, that how important it is to first understand what is population. So because population is directly linked to evolution. Now what is population genetics? When I say population genetics, I will be because genetics is a branch which deals with genes and and the process of transmission of traits from one generation to other. uh, now you can link what is population genetics is just we are considering the term genetics in terms of population. We are going to read genes and their transmission in with respect to population. What is Mendelian population? The population which follows the Mendelian law, they will be considered as Mendelian population. The population which has a the population which what is Mendelian population is a population where random mating is there, and the population is panmetic. Now talking about what is gene pool, then we will talk about what is gene frequency, what is genotypic frequency, what is Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium, what are the evolutionary forces in a population, what are the significance of Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. So why we are reading Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium, what will be the significance of this reading, and what is the relationship between Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium and evolution. So that is the significance, that we will be trying to make a relationship between a Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium and evolution. Now to start with, what is population? So population is a group of individual of particular species which are living at a particular space. They are interacting with each other, and then they can interbreed among themselves. And so to start with first point, an ecosystem consists of many species. And now what is species? Species is a group of living organism comprising of similar individuals capable of exchanging genes through interbreeding. So now if we say Homo sapiens, so we the human as one species, we are a group of living organism which will and we look very similar. We have two eyes, we have one nose, we walk erect, we stand erect, and we have capability to exchange genes among us. So exchanging genes through interbreeding. Now individuals of same species or particular region are called population. So if I take particular region, let's suppose I'm talking about India. Now just narrow it down more. I'm talking about North India, a group of individual. So now take the population definition, which is the fourth point. A group of individual or particular species occupying a definite space. Let's suppose this space is North India, in which the individuals interact, interbreed, and exchange genetic material. Apart from its ecological significance, so apart from the ecological significance of a population has an important role in evolution. That was exactly I was just talking about, that the population has a major role in defining evolution, because we all as an individual, we all collectively, we all individual of a we all individual, we sum up to make a population. But we individual as an individual, we do not evolve. A population evolves. So this seems to be a little confusing, but we'll see in upcoming slide that why and how the population has an important role in process of evolution. Now, role of population in evolution. Individual in a population cannot evolve during the evolution of species, and the population only can evolve, not the individual. So like, let's suppose, okay, I will take an example. First I will just read down these points. Population form the basic unit of evolution, not the species. For the process of evolution to occur in a system, there should be a changes in the genetic constitution. So that exactly I'm going to talk about. So let's suppose a pandemic occurs in a population. So let's suppose a pandemic occurs in North India, and because of that pandemic, certain blood group is in, like, let's suppose blood group A is at more risk in comparison to the other blood group, and let's suppose blood group O is at more advantage. So this pandemic is going to change the genetic constitution of a population. How? When I say genetic constitution, I'm talking about alleles. Okay, I'm talking about genes. So this pandemic is going to change the genetic constitution in a way, like, because the pandemic is making blood group A more susceptible. So somehow what will happen, the population, in a population, those individuals which were having blood group A may die or may get vanished from population. That will increase the population of other blood group in a population after some time, because they have better chance to reproduce, because they survived, and when they survive they will have more chance to reproduce among themselves. So because A blood group has vanished and B, AB and O blood group are existing, and onto it O blood group has more advantage, because I was just taking example because I just said that the O blood group has more advantage to survive over pandemic. So what you will see over that period of time, over a period of time, let's suppose 10 years or 20 years, when these individuals who survived during this pandemic, they will have chance to reproduce among themselves. And because O blood group people were more advantageous at that pandemic, so they will have more, uh, so after 20 years, what we will see, the population is having more blood group O individual. So let's suppose now talk in terms of allele. So IA allele controls blood group. IA allele gives blood group A, IB gives B, IA, IB gives AB blood group, and I gives O. Okay, so uh, in terms of alleles, IA allele has been vanished. The IA allele has been removed because of the pandemic. Now the allelic combination or the gene frequency has been changed because of the population, because of the pandemic in the population, not in an individual. There will be some, there will be definitely some considerable amount of individual which will have blood group A after, because they must have survived the pandemic because of some, they were getting some kind of privilege, health privileges and all. So what you will see after 20 years, the individual with blood group A will be there, but they will be less, they, they will be less in population, whereas other blood group people will be more. So the population has evolved in a way. A particular allele, that is I allele or other IB allele, has been selected. So population has evolved. So since the population is under, so now I'm talking about fifth point, since the population is undergoing evolution and not the individual, the changes should be in genetic constitution of population. So exactly, genetic constitution, allelic. So just break this term, genetic constitution or allelic, where I'm talking about allele or gene. So there are changes in allelic frequency or genetic frequency, or genotypic frequency of a population. There is considerable difference between the inheritance of genes in a population and that in the individuals. So what is the take home from this example is that what you can make it out is that the inheritance of alleles or genes in a population was more for blood group O, that was I allele or IB, but the inheritance of the allele IA will be there in those individuals who will survive the pandemic, and they will transfer them, that to their future generation. But because of this pandemic, because of the pandemic, the total overall genetic frequency has changed. So population has evolved. Okay, now what is population genetics? By definition, study of distribution and changes of allele frequency and interaction of alleles in a population. Okay, a population is prone to four main evolutionary forces. So we know, so evolution is something which is ever always going on. Okay, there is always a kind of there are certain evolutionary forces which are always working. So there are basically four main evolutionary forces. First is natural selection, and we are very much aware of this term, natural selection, where nature is selecting a particular genetic constitution. So natural selection, you have learned about this natural selection example in your class 12th in evolution chapter. We'll just talk about it. The genetic drift, we'll talk about genetic drift in next slide. Mutation, we know that the mutation is the one of the major evolutionary forces which has shaped the evolution, the process of evolution, and the way we look today. And gene flow, nowadays a gene flow has become an important factor in migration, because people are flying from one country to other, and they are influencing the genetic constitution of that place. So we know, like, there are various type of founders effect. I guess you have learned about founders effect. So let's suppose there is or a bottleneck effect. In this context it will not be right to discuss, but let's suppose but just listen about this founders effect. Founders effect, so when we say this person is a founder member, or a founder chairman of this company, it means that this was the first person who laid down the founding stone of the company, and after which the company showed a growth. So let's suppose a person A went to a group, like two individual went to a male and a female went to an island. Okay, went to island after 30 years or after 50 years. What you will see, there will be more what and both male and female were in a reproductive age. So what you will see after 50 or 60 or 100 years, you will find that there will be more number of individual who will be habitating that island, because probably they have reproduced and they have produced more offsprings, and further they also reproduce, and they produce a new um, individual, and that's how a population has a population, a group of individual has flourished in that island. But what is an important thing to notice here is that the male and female who first went there are the only source of the alleles in the population. Because let's suppose there was male was carrying allele I, which codes for blood group O, and he was homozygous for that. That means I, and the blood group for male was O, whereas the female was carrying IB and IB. So she was deployed. She was deployed of. She was homozygous for allele IB. So what will be interesting to note down that after 100 years, after 100 years, majority of the individuals which are living in that island were will be having blood group either B or O, either B or O. That is founders effect. But let's suppose after, like, because when the male and female went to island, 100 years has been passed till date. Let's suppose like in between 50 years, some group of individual came to that island, and they also get mixed up between they also get mixed up with that population. And those individual which came, they were having blood group A and AB. So what will be the chances is that, so what will happen because of the migration, because of some group of individual which came in between after 50 years, till 50 years they were having blood group either O or B. But now some group of individual have migrated to this place. They have the immigration is there. So what will happen that they will also get mixed up, they will also get interbreed. And what you will see after 50 years, that the individual, the population will have a blood group A, AB, B, and O, because there was a migration in between. So that's how the migration affects the genetic constitution. Now, last point, the study of population genetics is essential for understanding species adaptation and evolution. So, species adaptation and evolution, we will discuss about this. First, I want to tell more about on genetic. So, genetic drift is change in allele frequency due to chance event. So, let's suppose there were two type of allele, a red allele and blue allele. Because of some catastrophe or because of some kind of event, majority of the blue alleles got extinct, or they got died because of some kind of chance. So what you will see after some time, because first if when we started, the ratio was 5:5, but because of some catastrophe, I'm talking about the middle diagram, four blue alleles got vanished, or they got died, or they were swapped. So what you will find that the ratio now becomes 5:1. Now when they will reproduce, the ratio may become 10:2, because the number of red alleles were more, so they will have more chance of getting passed on to next generation. So that's very natural and very usual. Then and that's why the ratio will become 10:2, and that is genetic drift. It's change in the allelic frequency. So initially the allelic frequency was 5:5, that is 1:1 for both blue and red, but because of some event, because of some chance, the blue alleles were vanished, or they were removed, and because due to of that chance, the ratio become 10:2, that is 5:1. So that is genetic drift. So we talked about four major evolutionary forces. First was natural selection. You, natural selection, where natural forces are working, and where nature is selecting particular type of a genetic constitution, where a person has a better fitness when, or a particular type of trait is getting advantage over other trait. So those individuals which are getting advantage to survive at that condition, they are selected, and others are moved away from, and others are removed. So that is natural selection. That's a nature way to select. And you have learned about moths in your evolution in your class 7, about I guess they were the black moths and white moths, and I guess you are aware of this uh, classical uh, example. Other was genetic drift, that was change in allelic frequency due to chance. Third was mutation. Mutation is ever growing, because ever growing ever going process, because we know that we cannot stop evolution, because we know that the property of DNA polymerase, that it has a tendency to incorporate a mutation after several thousand of I guess after million or thousand bases it incorporates. During replication, it may incorporate some mutation after that. So uh, because of this, we cannot stop the process of evolution, this mutation. And mutation can also occur due to transposable elements. We also learned about transposable elements in our previous lectures. And then the fourth was first was natural selection, second was genetic drift, third was mutation, and fourth was migration or gene flow. Okay, now for better understanding of population genetics, a student must study the following terms. First, Mendelian population, gene pool, gene frequency, genotype frequency, Hardy-Weinberg law, and evolutionary forces in a population. So we'll talk about this. I will make a separate video for this. Till then, you just read whatever I just talked in this video. and I will make a separate